Hi, and welcome to this vocabulary lesson because we are going to look at synonyms, collocations in context, and words that belong in the word family. I hope you'll stick around with me every single day, learn these 3,000 words with me. Ultimately. So ultimate means the most or the best. But when we turn it into an adverb, ultimately means eventually, not now, but at the last. It can mean finally or someday, at length. It can talk about a final outcome. For example, after months of interviews, the company ultimately hired a candidate from within the organization. To ultimately hire, ultimately select, or ultimately choose means that at the end, there's a final result at the end of the whole process. Ultimately can talk about a decision after a reflective or a long consideration. We considered several vacation destinations, but ultimately decided to stay close to home. We ultimately decided, we ultimately concluded, or we ultimately agreed. That means after some kind of process, we agreed. We weighed the options, we thought carefully. Ultimately can feel kind of serious. The manager is ultimately responsible for the success of the project. That means at the end, the last person is this manager. And even though his employees might make the mistake, he is the one who is ultimately responsible, even if somebody else made the mistake. Ultimately responsible, ultimately accountable, or ultimately liable. It means at the highest or final level of responsibility. This is serious, it's authoritative. The manager is ultimately responsible for the success of the project. Ultimately can be used to talk about a fundamental truth or philosophy. Ultimately, now remember when we put an adverb at the beginning of a sentence and set it off with a comma, then we're saying this is the backdrop of what I'm about to say. Ultimately, happiness comes from meaningful relationships rather than material possessions. So ultimately means in the end, after everything is said, this statement is true. Ultimately comes from, ultimately depends on, ultimately boils down to. So we can summarize with the word ultimately. At the deepest, most essential level, it's thoughtful, it's philosophical. Ultimately can show a long-term result, either positive or negative. The team's persistence ultimately led to a breakthrough in the research. So we have ultimately led to, at the end, this is the result, ultimately resulted in, ultimately produced. It's a consequence that occurred after a period of effort or development, and it emphasizes a cause and effect over a period of time. Ultimately is common in formal writing. It's common in business communication, academic, or journalism. It's thoughtful. It's less common in casual speech, where speakers would say, in the end. In the end, when I'm speaking to my friends, I would probably say, in the end, instead of ultimately. However, it depends on the group of friends that you have. If you talk to a lot of people who are more educated, they would probably use ultimately in conversation as well as in writing. The opposite of ultimately is primarily, or could be never. So if something is primarily done, then it means I primarily thought. It means at the beginning of the process, this is how I thought about it, but ultimately I changed my mind. Never is that it doesn't happen at all. Even if I primarily thought about this, I never came to a conclusion. There's no noun or verb, but the adjective is ultimate. Maybe the noun is ultimatum. And if you give someone an ultimatum, it means this stops here, you have to make a choice. Then the adjective is ultimate and the adverb is ultimately. Ultimately. I really hope that you enjoyed this word. Research shows that if you know 3,000 words, then you can pretty much say anything you need to say. I hope I'll see you tomorrow, and please like and subscribe.